Hey, Fitzy here, back at again with another one. You ever have one of those days where you start running into problems? Well, I run into this one here. I had to make up a section here, make all this up here. I had nothing to go by in this section here. The problem I run into is that when I start making it, everything wasn't working right. Pieces were too small, I never had it on the right angle, I never had the right distance here and there, so I had to go back and readjust it. I'm going to show you now how to overcome problems when you get into issues like this here. And, main thing is to have patience and take your time. It'll all work out in the end. Stick around. Alright, so let's get started. What I got here is a front fender off a Volkswagen convertible. It's probably from the early 2000s, late 90s or whatever. I got some rust issues to deal with. I got this corner here gone. She's bad along here. She got a mounting hole that goes here, and she's got another clip that goes here as well. And the lip is gone here. Also, she's got a bad spot down here on the bottom side of the lip here. It's a bit thin here, so I'm going to end up making this bottom section to the thing of the fender itself. But a lot of it is we've got to figure out how we're going to go about this. If you look closely at this here, it's got a couple of shapes going on. It's got a shape that comes up on an angle here, and then it curves across here, and it tips down. Also, it's got this shape going on as well. It turns, and it's got this rotation going on here. Then it also has a dip that comes down here, so a section of the fender is not even there. So, we're going to make this in multiple pieces. One of the big things I'm going to make this from, I'm going to go over it, is this here gauge metal. This panel here is 20 gauge steel. I went and checked it, and we're going to replace it with 18 gauge. Now, a lot of people are saying, why don't you replace 20 gauge with 20 gauge? The biggest dilemma I've always run into when repairing thin panels, the thinner metals, it's very hard to weld pieces into a car with 22 and 20 gauge metal, and it ends up warping a lot. So I found that by going with heavier steel, it gave me a couple of advantages. It held its shape better, and also when it come time to grinding it, you had room to grind the metal away. I've talked about that in a number of other videos. When you're grinding off your piece and your welds and whatever you got on it, you would like to have some room that if you do hit it, that you're not going to break through it or you're going to thin it out too much, whatever. I got into the habit of doing all my repairs with 18 gauge steel. That's on everything that I've ever done now here lately. Even the older stuff, the thin stuff, all that, I do it all with the 18 gauge. I find it easier to work with, especially when it comes to the welding part of it. But the shapes of it, because of how I make things, it makes it easier. Now, if you were going to turn around and work the shapes out and try to make all this sort of one piece, maybe you could do it with 22. I just find that when it comes to patching up vehicles and that a lot, I taught myself that 18 gauge is way better to work with than the 22, because at the end of the day, you're trying to make a structurally strong piece. So, let's go ahead now and get started on this. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to make the piece up for here. I'm just going to, if you look at it here, it's a bit rusty on the bottom, so I'm going to duplicate this and this little lip here. And then I'm going to turn around and add this after. You can see it's a bit of a crown panel. But I'm not going to remove none of this yet until I got the piece made. I'm just going to make this here right simple now on a vise. I'm going to make it out of a larger piece to go up along here. I'm not going to cut nothing out until I'm ready to do all the cutting but itself. Okay, I went ahead, found a piece of metal and cleaned it up. Turned around and marked 2 points up here and measured down 7 inches, so I knew where the bottom was to on the bottom of this here, because this slides in and the rocker panel on this here Volkswagen comes up like to this section here. So I'm going to go ahead, this piece here now, I never cut it straight. I cut it on a bit of an angle like this here, so all my bends on the bottom. I'm going to give myself lots of room. I'm going to make a bend here first of all, because I know this section here got to be done. So I'm just going to start from here, come up, measure this distance, and put a bend in it, and then bend it back and bend it over. I'm going to do it all in the vise. All I did is I marked it. As you can see, that it's not a straight line because I've got this on an angle. I'll trim all that after the fact. I just set it in place there where I figured it was going to be lots of room, and then I lined it up at the bottom, and I just drew a straight line across it. And I'm going to make my bend. I give lots of access in the bottom of this because I got to trim all this off after the fact. But I wanted to make sure that I had enough there that I can work with, because I got to put a couple of bends in here. Now all I'm going to bend with that is in the vise. So that's all I did. I bent it a few different ways, dollied it up. Then I got the crease going across there. I'm happy with that, to duplicate that little lip there. Okay, so now I got the angle up bent on it and whatever. So I'm going to work on shaping the top side and shaping the bottom side here. A lot of you have asked me about this piece of ivory. Okay, there's nothing, like I never designed this or cut this out if you look at it closely. It's just chopped off. There's nothing wonderful about it. It's got a nice straight edge on it here, and you know, it's on a bag corner on it there. I use it for clamping stuff on. You know, I never bothered to dress it up. The piece came like that, and a lot of you asked me the size of it. 6 inches by 7.5 by 6 inches. I think it was 6 by 6 by 7, what it is roughly about. And that's all it is, just an old scrap piece of I-beam that I got kicking around that I use this for clamping things to, hammering on, just a dolly, just fits on me bench right nice there. You clamp stuff on it, move it around the bench. It's got a bit of weight to it, but it's easy to maneuver. I have the bigger one down here as well. That is about 5 feet, and it's not as wide. It's only about, I think it's 3.5 inches wide on the top side. They're just scrap pieces of steel that I've come across over the years. I never designed them to say, oh, that's at a particular size. It just ends up this way, so it's great for that. Now, let's get back at this. What I got to do now is I got to put a crown on it here. If you look at it, it's not a straight piece, so I got to crown this panel, and I'll just bend it up so it fits there. I keep forgetting I got the pipe bamble. Alright, I went ahead and I tweaked it and I dialed it and I tweaked it and I dialed it. You can see there's a little slight crown on that panel there now. And I went and test fitted a few times on top of this here and got it fitting nice, where I'm happy with it. Then I went ahead and I fitted over where I wanted it to go on the angle there, and I trimmed off, I marked it and I trimmed it off and cut this end off here. So now I got her set up so that she's got the lip there. So all I'm going to do here now is I'm going to clamp that in place where I'm happy with it, and then make sure it fits nice, and then I'm going to cap the end of it. Now I got it clamped in place, and I'm happy with the fit going down along there. Everything's fitting nice. And I clamped in place. So now we got to make the piece to go here. Now too many people sits down and starts trying to make this perfect, okay? Trying to make that perfect little shape to fit in there, and then when you trims it off, then you find out you got too much of a gap here, and it's too tight here, and you grinds that off, and then it's too not wide enough down here. I've said it many a times. Look, just a big old piece. Slap it on there. Get the contour right. Tack weld it on. Do not be concerned about perfection, okay? In terms of trying to get it perfect. It will get there. It's just that it's just so hard to try to make a piece the fit there to get the gap just so, and then trying to weld that corner. Just lay that in place there, get a nice contour on it, make sure you got lots of metal there that you can grind off and cut off, and then just turn around, just tack weld it in along there, take it off, weld it up on the inside, weld it up on the outside, and Bob's your uncle. Okay? So don't ever overthink this stuff. Like you're thinking that shape there, that's the next shape you got to get. Yes, that's the next shape you got, but you don't need that shape. Just a square old scrap piece of steel. Put it under, weld it on. There it is. Just tack weld it in place. Nothing fancy. Now there's your shape. You can see the contour in there. Is your inside section, outside piece. All I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go in here now and I'm going to weld all this up solid. So it's nice and solid. And then I'm going to clean all this up out here then. Cut it off with the grinder. Clean it up. And then I'll weld it out here. And I'll grind the edge on it so I got a nice clean edge on it. Don't ever overthink these patches. This is basically the same for a dog's leg or anything like that on a car. Make it the same way. Don't overthink of it. If the outer section here is what you're really concerned about, this here you can do it always on the flat. With just a scrap piece of steel such as that. I'm going to get that welded up there now. It's just welded up on the inside. Nothing fancy. I come out here then, and I chop the piece off it, and then I run the grinder over the edge of it again. You can look at it, and you can actually see now the shape of it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-weld this out here now, because now I know exactly where it's got to go, and I'll weld this seam here, and I'll grind and dress that seam again. There you have it. Just grind it up. Everything's fine as kind. So now all I got to do now is find this width here. And I'll come back here and I'll mark this here and I'll cut it a little bit wider. Because it's always nice to have it a little bit wider, and then I can grind it back to match this after it's all welded. So usually I like to have it a little bit longer down here so I can dress this after the fact. Give yourself a bit of leeway room. So I'm going to mark this down here, trim this off now, and start getting ready to fit this up here, find out where I'm going to cut it across and fit it in place. So there you have just a little lip there, and you can see it's a little bit longer. It's the way I want it. I'll cut that after the fact now when it's all said and done. So now I got to figure out where I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to cut this off about right here somewhere. Across here is my plan. So I'm going to mark this here now and trim this panel off first. Not going to touch this one yet. I was going to cut this one off and cut it off straight across there. Now I went ahead, I trimmed it off up along here, so now I got the length of it. Now in this panel here, there is, as you can see it, there's a slight body line right here, okay? That comes down and it just fades out to nothing over here. All I went and did there is I just marked it, found out where I was going to mark across here, so I got to put a little small kink into that now, and I'll just use the vise for that. I'll just come over here now and I'll put that in the vise like so, and I'll just give that a little bit of a tweak down and put a body line there. Now you can barely see it there, but there is the crease across there. I just bent it in the vise a small bit to get the line in there, so the line is there now, which is good. You can grind it, and you can actually see when I come up across it, you can actually see it. Now, over here now, this here is when this is cut off, this has got to go this way, and you can see how much is overlapped there now because I got the welding on the inside. So I'm going to come over here now and trim off this outer edge here, all the way down through here, and make it even, so that when this slides over, it's going to have enough room there for do a cutting butt on. I don't want it to hang out over. I want it to be on the paint itself. So I'm going to come over here, probably mark this about right here somewhere, and cut it off right on down through here. So as you can see, I cut it off to go in along there. And what I went and did then, I went ahead and I scribed it along this edge here, just so I can keep an eye on it. And up here now, I got to cut this off up here. I'll cut that off there and remove a section of this coming down here. Just get it on my way so this panel can slide over now. I don't get into cutting the whole panel right out. I want it to slide over because I got to mark the hole for this one down here now, where that there is going to be bolted on. And so when I move this over, then I'll just mark it on the back side, and I can drill a hole in it and start trimming up the bottom side. Now I just cut the upper lip off, just this edge here. That's all I cut off. Is that much of it? Just so that I can actually get it to fit up here, see? So now it's got a nice fit in here, and it's lined up on that line. That's the reason why I scribed it. I got the line there now. Oh, focus. I got the line right here, and I got it marked. So I can come down there. Now I got to clamp together. I'm going to flip it over now and show you the way I'm going to mark the inside. As you can see, I just got to clamp down. I'm going to mark all this now. Mark this across here, up along here, along the back here, and then I'm just going to trim all this off and drill that hole. There you go. I'm just going to drill that hole out there and cut it off along the marker line here and then clean it up. There it is. All that's trimmed up. So now when you fit it in place there, everything lines up pretty good. With the hole and everything, the existing holes there. And that'll line up the existing hole. Now the thing with this is now, this also got to go up. Like I told you before, when you're putting panels in cars and you're overlapping them, over-exaggerating this here now. This panel, first of all, had to go this way, okay? And it also got to go this way because of the bottom side there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this off because I want to scribe this across here because I want to use it for a reference up here on this end here. So that when I move it up, I got an idea where it's going. And I got to cut the bottom off of here. So this here allows this to slide up that little tiny bit. So I'm going to go ahead now and clean all this up. So I went ahead and I cleaned off where I'm going to be welding it to, and I cut off the very bottom of it, here on the floor, way down there. And now I can fit this in place here. What I had to do is I had to trim this up here to allow it to go up. So that was about right here, previous. And then I had to trim it so that I could actually slide up like such and fit down here in this corner better. See, like that. So now that's ready to go. I'm going to clamp that in place there now. Tack weld that in place to hold it on, and then do the cutting butt. Just a few tacks put in it. It's still all together. I do this way, so that way the panel is where it's supposed to be. This just got to fall inwards now. When I cut it off, trim it up, it'll fall straight in. Instead of trying to fit it and then trying to weld this corner here and then weld it over here and try to cut it. No, this is a lot easier to, I find, do it this way. Like if you had to cut this to fit, you'd be here holding this piece trying to get it in place. By leaving that piece on the back side there, that is where that's got to be. Right? Now if you want to, you can just run the bead across there and be done with it. But we're going to do the cutting butt on this here now. Because some people, that's all they'd probably end up doing anyway. You could get away with that if you wanted to. I don't. So I'm going to do the cutting butt. I'm going to start up here because I want to get this outer corner done first. And this corner has dropped this way here in order for me to line it up. So I got to cut it across here so far first, so I can tweak this corner to get this to line up, and then I'll start working my way around it, get the piece put in place. Now, I cut it across there on a 45, as you can see. I closed up the gap and everything, cut through them existing welds here. Now you can see this outer side edge is still high. Now I can take this now, and I can move this down, see? Just a little tiny bit. And I'll weld that corner now and weld that front edge, and then that'll be all straightened away. That'll be right where I want it to be. Here it is all cut and butt in place. Just went around, I tacked it, cut it, and I fit it, and I cut it, and I fit it. Here's the back side piece. That was right here. That was right there. And you can see now when you lay it on top of it, the way I moved it. The way I moved it in and whatnot. Cut the piece out of the way so it fit in there. But that's it. So now I'm just going to go ahead and weld all that up. So there it is, all welded up. Okay. Now remember earlier I talked about leaving this a little bit wide. You can actually see it here now, look. You actually see how wide that is there. So now I can just take the grinder now and I just grind it off this way here. And I grind that flush and blend that down into there so it's a nice edge on it. There it is now, all grinded up. Nice slip along there. Nice mount for the bottom, all away, and it's all welded up along that edge there. A nice seam all along there. Got that little crease going across here. Hard to see there, but it's there. If you look at it closely, you can see it there. Yeah. So now let's move up to this one. This is our next one. Now, the problem we got here is hard to see. I'm going to draw it out here for you. And then we got another shape here. That's basically what we got going on there. It's this shape here, coming up to this line here, and then this line here. So I'm going to do this in sections. I'm going to make this section here, and this section here. starting in here, working my way out to it. I'm not concerned about this down here yet. I'm going to make this right long here. I'm going to trim this off after the fact and make this inner side section first. I just want to make a replacement panel for here. Now, if you had another fender for spare parts or whatever, you could cut a section right here, this section right here out of here, and just slide it over, because these arches are pretty well uniform. It gets a bit wider on the top, but you'll manage to make it work down here, and you can just slide it down here. So sometimes just having another old fender kicking around, you can take a section out of here and move it over to here. But we haven't got that, so I'm going to have to go ahead now and make all this up. So I'm just going to cut a piece out, random piece, a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, and work on getting this line here. That's my first thing here. I'll use the line up here as the contour, so I can come down here and make the line flow off nice. Here's all the scrap piece of steel. I cleaned it up. What I did here is, you see I got this curved shape on here. And how I got that is I got that from here. Okay? That's the shape there. Now this curvature follows through all these all the way up through here. That curve is a curvature here, a curvature here, and a curvature here. They follows through up to here. Now I need to start up here and work my way back, but how am I going to get this one? Well, all I did is I got this one here, and I got that drawn up now, so that's the same as the bottom one down here, like so, and that'll just flow off. I can go right on up through here, and you can see that that'll flow right along through there. That's why I say if you had another piece of fender, so that'll flow down this way here. So now all I'm going to do is, this piece is going to go up here, like so. Let it hang down a little bit further, like that. All I'm going to do is measure from this line here up to this here piece here, and I'm going to measure down here, and I'm going to draw a parallel line to that line there. Take my scribe and scribe it, and then I can cut this off here, and then I'll have that curvature right here. Now, all I did, brought this up here, and I put this in place where I wanted to be, and I measured from this point here out to where this crease starts. Can I get the light on it? Yeah. Oh. It gets the crease starts there, okay? Then all I did is I come down here and I set my protractor up to there, and I just ran along there like that. And you actually see the line there. Right? Now I'm going to trim that off there, and that there should be the same contour as that there. Now I got it all trimmed up, clamped in place. If you look down at it, you can see that that flows along that size there. I had to grind this back, test fit it a few times so it lined up nice on the lines. And as you can see, it sticks off a good ways, even down here on the back side here. See it better there? You can see that there, because that turns down. So there's got to be a bit of material left on this end down here, because I think this comes down to about right here somewhere and then kicks up. So all I'm going to do is just make the whole panels. Now, the piece I cut out, people are going to say, well, why don't you just bend it over? Well, you can't bend over. You can beat on it, but the panel's going to want a tendency to go this way on you, okay? When you try to bend this over, right? When you try to bend this over this way here, as you can see, it doesn't line up over here on this end anymore when I lay that flat there. I can lay that flat there pretty good, and you can see the way the end of it goes, because it's allowing it to do it, right? So I've after grinding this up a bit too and make this fit nicer. So all I'm going to do is clamp that in place there. Now I'm going to weld that piece there on there and make two of them one. I'll get that all set up so I got that nice bead going down through there, and then I'll come back, clamp it in place, and work on getting this section here done. Now, as you can see, they're laid on the bench now, the angle that it's on, and when you hold it up this way here, you can see that it's straight. Straight across this way here. Straight across that way there. Okay? Now the problem you got, if you had to bend this here crease, you could do it. You could turn around and mark that little crease out and bend a piece of metal here. But this metal here, you're going to need a shrinker stretcher. This here is going to have to be stretched right here for this to work, because this here is going to want to turn on you and go this way on you when you go to bend it around. I just prefer to make pieces and weld them together like this here. I found I get a better finish on my flat surfaces, and there's less work, and I find the shrinker stretchers marks up the metal a lot, and it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things. I've used them before. I've found this method here to me to be faster, because I'm not fighting against the metal. I'm just letting the metal rest flat. I'm using flat surfaces in order to work with, and my straight edges, and I get a lot sharper, crisper edges. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to weld that up there, and weld that up there. Now I'm going to grind and dress this here so I can move on to the next piece. Like I've often said many times before, take a piece, weld a piece to it, finish it, okay? And then go on from there. Because after I get this done, then we got to do the wheelhouse outside here, the piece on the outside here. So you saw me there grind it all off. Pretty straightforward and simple. Just grind it on a flat edge. Grind it on a flat edge. One of the advantages of using this 18 gauge is because you got room to grind. Okay? That was 22 gauge or 20 gauge. You'll be, worried about running thin. This is still not nice and strong. I went and grinded the inside half smooth because I still got to fit it on the panel. But you can see that's basically one piece now. And there's a lip. I'll round this out later on to give it a uniform thing, but I want to leave it there now just for references so I can see the sharp edge. So when I come up here and I lay it in place, I can actually follow the flow to get it to go with the rest of the panel, right? So now I'm going to fit that in place, clamp it and size it all up, and then I'm going to mark this one here. Now I just went ahead and I marked it. I clamped it in place and I give it a rough mark. I'm going to dress it on the panel here. I've done that before too, so I'm just going to cut this off, get the roughness out of the way, fit it up in place, and then I can grind it with the grinder to get the nice edge out. Now you can see there's a lip and everything on here now. When you look down, it's a little bit wider. So all I'll do now is I'll use this panel here that I already got there, and I'll grind this back here till it's flush with this one here, because I got this all fitting nice and up along here the way this flows off and everything. So I'll turn around, I'll just grind that back now. That's all I did. I just grinded it off using this here as my backstop, and I got that to go flush along there. So now I'm just going to make an end now to cap on over that. And the problem you got here now is this seam here wants to go straight down this way here. You can't move it up or down because this panel got to go this way. So when I weld this piece on here, I'm going to weld it on the bottom side of this here, not on the face of it. I'll weld it this way on this one here, right? So that way, when I move, it doesn't have to move back. I'll have to trim this piece out of the way in order to get this fall in place. So this here body line don't move. Because normally, like what I done over here, I just capped the end of it and I knew this had to go this way. But I had nothing over here to throw off. Here, if I cap it on the end here and move it this way, I'm going to throw off this body line here. This body line got to stay right where it's at. So I'll cap this on the side. Or, sorry, on the bottom side here. Instead of capping it this way, I'm going to cap it this way. Now, most times, explain it better, most times I cap stuff, I'll just cap it over the end this way here, okay? Now, I got the thickness of the metal I got to deal with then to go back. Now, the problem I got is I want this here to sit flush, so I'm going to mount this on the side, like so, and weld it on, and not on the top. That way, this will move this metal back, the thickness of the metal, to where I want it. And then when I cut the panel off over here, it'll work. All welded up, comes with a handle and all, look. Now, I went up here and I figured where it had to go. Now the problem I got here now is because I got this lip put where it should be, this lip here was in the way. So I need to come up here now and cut this lip off the way so the panel can fall back to it so this can line up again. So I'm just going to trim this off here and just trim this down here. I want to give it so that it'll have something to rest on when it goes up in place so it won't throw it all the whack. It's not going to hacking all the big piece out of it. Right? So that's where that's going to go like that. So all I'm going to do now is I'll cut that back so that falls in there nicer. Now I'll just trim that off out of the way, as you can see. Now the panel fits in there nice. And that there actually fits flush, you know. That's back in where it should be. That fits flushing along there. So now, and this here lines up here again. This body line here. So now I'm ready to move on to setting it up to fit over here. I need to attach this to this first. So I'm going to trim this up better now so it's close to where it should be, but there's still lots of access on it because this guy's come down and turn on an angle like this here. And I'm not going to put all this up here and I'll cut this straight across here. So I'm going to trim this up now so the panel fits nicer. Well, I got it marked here now. We're going to cut it off. And I hope you're all sitting down because I got something to tell you. Guess what I did? I used the template. I had the bumper cover here. I told the customer to drop it off because I needed this shape here. I wanted to find out where the front of this was. So basically all I did is I made up this template that fit there. And then I just come over here and laid it on the panel, line up the edge of it there, and transferred it over onto that. So now all I'm going to do is just cut that off there and trim it off and start getting ready to cap in the end of it. Template. Oh my, what have I come to it all? Okay, I got it clamped in place, I got it cut off and trimmed up, and I took an old scrap piece of steel from out underneath the bench, and I'm going to fit that on here now and just cap the end of that and weld that right onto there like I've done before. Nothing fancy, just welded it on. Note, all this I've been doing here today come from my scrap bin underneath the bench. I haven't had to cut up a piece of steel. We're talking about it's all old scrap stuff I got kicking around. Alright, get that welded up. It's close, but not close enough. Trial and error. I'm going to have to do some work right here. No big deal, it's only steel. I'll cut this through here again now, tweak this back, and weld it back up again. That's a lot better. As you can see, I had to open it up a good bit. That's all part of it. Here's what I'm left with. Got a fair bit of a gap there to fill in. No big deal. You can always weld it up. That's not a big issue when it comes to steel. What are we going to use to fix that? My collection. More over there. Welding hangers. Some call them coat hangers. I call them welding hangers. I've collected a lot of them over here, so I use them for a lot of things. I use them for hanging stuff off. They're probably one of the cheapest, well-used units you can ever use. I've even made tools out of them. There's a lot of dozen things you can do with them, but one of the major things you can do with them is weld up holes, use them as filler rods. So I'm going to cut off a piece there now and weld it up. All you do is cut a piece of it off here. And one thing about these old coat hangers, they got like a gold wax on them. I don't know what's on them, some sort of waxy film on them. So I usually run some through the wire wheel on the grinder and just cleans the old wax off them. And they're usually the best kind. And I'll just use that now as a filler rod to weld that in there. Look at that! All welded up. Get be gone, that's what we're going to call that. That's what we'll call that, get be gone. But I ended up welding up on the inside again, because where I did cut through it and everything. So now I'm just going to grind that off and dress it up again. But don't ever be concerned about, making mistakes and having troubles, because, I was having issues with this because I knew the way it was all fitting together, and it has to line up with something else. A lot of it was trial and error. I tried to get as close as I can to it, and then I adjusted it as I went. So, even with the template, I still needed to fit the panel to it. So shag that template. And I only got this temporarily mounted on this here just so I can fit it all up. And that'll come off after when I wants to make all this up in here yet. But like I said, one piece at a time, fix one problem at a time. Don't worry about none of this in here yet. Just concentrate on getting this section here, getting this looking right, and then move on to the next one. So I want to get this all dressed up now. And there it is, all ground, dressed up, all ready to go. I say a few of you after noticing seeing this already, that the piece that I made is not big enough for it. But this is the type of thing, like running into this here, this is the type of stuff you're going to run into every now and again when you're making pieces up. You might make it too small or whatever. Don't panic, okay, don't panic. I'm going to address this. Now we'll get to that. All it is only steel, like I said before. All you gotta do is add a piece of metal onto it. Okay, but all I'm concerned about now is I want to get this piece here straightened away, and I'm trying to get this here figured out, okay? Now I got to fit this piece back on here now, the piece that goes on here. I got the plastic piece. I got to fit that on there now and start sizing all this up here to see what I got, because there is a third hole that's supposed to go up here, and there's also a mounting hole that has to go here somewhere. So now I went ahead and I cleaned up all the paneled areas and I cut out all the rust. There's supposed to be a tab here for a bolt to bolt onto here and over here as well. I put 2 marks up here. Down here, this has a drop down. There's a mounting hole right here. All I'm going to do for him is I'm going to weld pieces on there and give him a spot that he can drill a hole and bolt it on later on. I also got to be concerned with this up here. I got to actually make this thing, as you can see, I cut section out of here. I also got to do some repairs here. Don't get overwhelmed with it. It's all a part of it. I got the piece here now that just falls into place here. And that fits in there like so. So now I just got to have it so that it mounts on here, which is absolutely nothing there, right? And I'm going to continue on. So all I'm going to do is work on making the pieces extend down. Make a piece come down here, let it extend down here, extend it down here. This was a little bit longer and had a little bit of a bead on it. I'm not going to be concerned about it. All this is underneath the front fender on this car. Oh, here's all I did. I just took a large piece of steel. It goes up past this here, and I turn around and I trimmed it so it fit along here. So now I got to fit in place. I'm kind of roughed in the type of shape that I want on the bottom of it, just roughly put in, trying to get an idea of where everything's got to go for him to put that in. And then I got to figure out like this section here. The more I think about it, I think what I should do first is finish this off, okay? I've talked about it before, make a piece, make it part of one. I was trying to make all this in one piece, but this gets pretty complicated here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to install this piece on the fender and repair the section and get this section down to here. So I got something to go by and get all this here corner, get this here straightened away so this looks right, and then I'm going to work on building on this here. I was going to build all this here, build it up to it and weld it onto it and then make all one piece, but I think the problem I'm going to have is I'm going to run into is this piece here is going to become very complicated. And I got to go back to my original thought process of what I've always said: make a piece, weld the second piece onto it, make it one, put the third piece on it, make it one, make a fourth piece on it, make it one. So now it's all one piece. So let's put it in the fender and make it one. This down here is a little bit more complicated, but I got access to the back side of it so I can do all my dressing and grinding with this piece on. But I need this piece here in order to put it in place. But this got to go this way in order for me to weld to it. So I can't go welding this on and welding this onto this here without this in place. So I'm going to go ahead now and do the cut and butt on this here. I got to put a small piece in it up here. I'll trim that up and I'll put a piece in there and get that set up and get that welded in. Now I went ahead and I cut and butted in place. There's the old piece I cut out. Right? There's the old piece I cut out of it. That's right there, like so. So that's gone. Now I got it all welded in place. I never done nothing with this down here. I'm gonna put a piece in here and a piece in here. As you'll see what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to finish this off. I'm going to grind dress this up, make sure this is all nice and looks the part here now, and then I'll move on to finishing this here. Now I got that all welded in and all grinded up. Got a nice flow down through here. I left this long. I'm not worried about it right now. I can trim all that off after the fact. Now I'm over here. We still got that hole. Remember before? You can see where I ended. Don't overthink this. You're going to try to start figuring little pieces in here, big long sections. Do one section at a time to a corner. I'm going to cut this out here. I'm going to find a piece of scrap steel, weld it here, and get this edge here so it's nice and straight along here. Then I'm going to put a piece in here, go straight down here. Not going to worry about none of this down here right yet. And then weld this section in here. I'm not going to try to do this in one piece and bend it out of 90 and try to fit it in there and squish it and all that type of stuff. I'm just going to do one piece at a time, cut across here. Don't be concerned about having to cut into the other panels to cut the piece out. It's only steel. You can weld it back up again. So I'm going to cut the piece out of here now and make up a little piece to put in there. So all I did, I just trimmed it out, went back to good metal. I cut out a little piece, and I went and turned around, I fit it in place, trimmed it up, and you can see it's longer and whatnot. I'm going to weld that in place there now. I'm going to weld it on this side here first and start working my way across and leave this edge alone because I want this to flow in. If I start to weld the two corners here, it's going to be a problem up in this end here. It'll want to fall and everything. So I'll get the top side up here, weld it this side up here, and weld this end last because it may have to come up and down for this here to line up properly. So that's all I'm going to do now, is weld that in there like such. Finish that off first. Not going to overthink this. It can get overwhelming at times, but it's a complicated section. Just take it one step at a time. Here you go. Look at the lovely welds. Oh, the lovely welds. Perfect beads. It's thin metal, heavy metal. I'm using the heavier gauge. This is 18 gauge, this is 20 gauge. I'm using welding from this to this. I'm burning holes every now and again, and I gotta use this here to control my heat, and I just feed off of this onto that there to try to get it. It's very hard if this was 22 gauge or 20 gauge metal to try to get weld two of them together with ease. I just found it a lot easier starting off with heavier gauge metals. I got room to grind, I got something to weld to, something that holds its shape, so there's an advantage to it. I'm gonna clean that up there now and get ready to move on to that piece. Well, I got ahead of myself. I got that piece all grinded up and fitting in there, and then I went ahead and cleaned this up down here, and I cut a strap piece of steel, as you can see, and I welded that in place. Now all I gotta do is left is to grind that up and dress all that up, so that is done. So then I got my structure up here all sorted out for the fender and everything to fit, and then I can start working on this down here. So I'm gonna go ahead now, get this here all grinded up. So I got that all grinded up and everything's done there, and then I went ahead and I took this piece here, and if you noticed it, that it goes along here and then it kicks out, right? And this fits in here like so, like that. And what I did, I went on the back side and I marked it over here, so it flowed along with the original one, like it did, and it just went along there. So I'm going to trim all that off there now because that will be the inside corner. I also earlier went in and welded all the inside of this as well, so it was all nice and strong. And I marked it up here, so I can cut that off there. There's a rough looking line, but it won't look that bad. So, just to give me an idea. But I got to trim this all off now so I can get ready to install this first lip. Like, you know, the trick with it is like you're looking at complicated pieces like this all the time. The way this is all shaped, this turns. This steps up, steps down. This goes flat out this way. Don't overthink it. As you can see here now, we got this all finished here now. And there was a rust hole here was an issue. We got that fixed. Right, this here, this seam here, we want to get this here, you know, to flow nice, so we got that fixed. So all that's done. So now our next thing is now to start working on this flat section here. All I'm going to do is trim that off there, flat piece of steel on it, weld it in across there, grind and dress it. Then I'll trim it off again. Now you can see I trimmed it off along here, and I got a nice flow now coming along here, and I got a nice cornered edge. So all I need to do now, first thing I'm going to concentrate on, is making this lip here. All I'm going to do, take a flat piece of steel, lay that in place like so, and just weld it in. Nothing too complicated. Not going to worry about trying to make it fit in there or whatever. I can trim it all up after the fact. I'll set that up in place there now, and I'll just weld that on. Don't that look lovely? Look, piece hung off the side of it and everything. I'll go ahead now, weld it up, and I'll trim that up, and you won't even know. Now it's starting to come around. Okay, I got that all welded. I welded it on the inside as well, and I turned that grind it all off. And all I done with that is I took my air grinder, I changed out the disc on it, and put an old cotton wheel on it, and just took my time and grinded that inside edge in there. Just taking your time. You don't force these wheels because they are cutting wheels, and all I'm just using it is like a file. I just slowly took my time filing it down, little tiny bit, like not too big RPM, just taking my time to grind it off to get a nice inside edge there, as you can see. So now I got that done. I got to mark this, trim that off to the shape that I want it there, and then I'll put another piece going downwards. So all I did is I trimmed it off, so it's parallel to that there. You get that? Now you can see it coming together here now. Like, it's pretty crude the way I do this, but I've always found it faster and makes a lot more sense, because it's a lot easier to shape steel than it is to try to turn around and cut a little piece of steel to try to fit up into place things. Just put a piece on there, weld it on, grind it to fit it. And it's always worked out. It's a lot faster. So now I just got another little piece here. Another piece of that big long section. So I'm going to lay that there like that and weld it on there. It's always nicer to have it a bit longer. Don't ever be concerned about it being, oh my God, I should cut that off so it's just perfect there. Always think about your welded edge. Don't think about your next section after that, because you've got room to cut it off and you may change your ideas or something like that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to weld that on there and grind that piece up as well. There it is, though. Just a little tiny lip on it. Just a little detail that goes along with that lip there. It's all grinded off, welded on the inside, and I just trimmed it off, right? It's nice when you start seeing it all come together, right? And you can see all the edges and everything falling into place, and all the strength has been given back to it. Now, I'm back to my original piece. I started off with this big old piece that I started with. I'm going to fit that up in place there now, and decide on how I'm going to cut this end, to cut this off here. And what I'm going to do here, I like to put some sort of little lip on this, so I'm going to work on some ideas to come up with to put a lip on that, and then I'll fit it on here then. So this is what I come up with. I just need a spot here for it to mount, and up here in the front there's a bolt goes right here in the corner. And so all I'm going to do here now is I just want to put a little rolled edge on this here, and all I'm going to do that with is a pair of pliers. Just a simple pair of pliers, nothing fancy. I'm just going to take this here and I'm going to bend over the edge, and then when I get it all bent over where I'm happy with it, I'll take the hammer and dolly and I'll wet and put a nice little rolled edge on it. Again, I've talked about it before in other videos. Shapes turn around and give you strength. So anytime you can put a bend in a piece of steel, it'll actually give strength to the panel. Fancy, I'm just bending it over a little bit at a time, using the pliers. And that's basically your first start of it. You can see it don't look like much there right now, but I'm going to take it over in a vise now and use the dolly on it. And use the edge of it. You could probably use a piece of angle iron or anything like that. I just want to use the dolly for a number of reasons, because I got that rolled edge on it. But I'm going to work on getting the bottom done first. The little short sides helps get areas like that done, see? So I got the lip all rolled over in place, and I got it fit up in place now. This here panel here is bad in spots here, and I was debating on whether I'm going to remove it or not, and I decided yes I am. So what I went and did is I clamped it in place here now, and I went and marked all these locations here, so I can actually drill them out and file them. Now all I did here was I clamped it in place, of course, and scribed it. Here's how I did it. That's just the old black marker, and I put the marker on it, and then I scribed them into the black marker where you can actually see where it's to, so the holes are in the right location. You get more precise marks, right? Now these ones here are not a square. So I'm going to sit down now, and I'm going to drill these out and just use a file, a triangulated file and a square file, and file them out, and I'm just going to drill that one out. I'm going to get all this made first before I bothers with cutting this piece off. I still have to put another one up here of this from this here same unit, and I'll just mark off where that got to be, and I'll do that after the fact, because this here has 3 holes in it with 3 slots. 1, 2, 3. So I got to make sure I put it in the right location. So now, wasn't that tedious? You can see now I got the little slots put in there and the square holes. All it is, I drilled a few holes, upsized them, used the file on the large ones. Had this old triangle file here that I used on the square ones there. Okay. They come over in the arc. I think it's about time I bought a new one. What do you think? Broke off there a while ago. End was broke off it for years. Yeah. But anyway, that's all I done with that. It's a bit tedious work, takes a bit of time. There's actual punches you can get for these. I haven't got them. There's a machine you can get. I don't know if you can get that size and be able to do them. There's no real easy way of doing these. You just got to take your time. Describing the line, doing the marker trick with it, scribing the line and keeping everything inside of it, and just sit down and file it. It's probably, I don't know, 20 minutes or more into this filing. Trying to get all these just so, but it all fits together nice now. Turn it over there, and they all lines up in their little slot, like so. See, that panel's ready to be installed now. Now all I'm going to do is, I was going to save this, but now that I got them in there, I'm going to cut it clean right off, because there is this issue here. I'm going to cut it right off, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up on this hole here and hold it in place, and then weld it on back here so it's nice and straight, and then I'm going to cut this off here and remove it and then weld it on. Much the same way it does everything else. It's too big, it's too long, it's going to stick out on the inside, but that's fine, and I'll get that all set up here now so we can weld it on. There you have it. You can see it's lining up on the squares there. Lining up on the hole in the front. And you can see how bad this one here was. The sections of it all gone. Rusted out, whatever. So that's fine, it's gone there. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, pull this up in place here, and I'm going to weld that in along here. And then I'm going to take the grinding wheel and cut that off there. And then weld that on there. I just tack welded on in there in a few spots and welded it on so it's solid. Then I come down here and I cut the section off. Just never cut the whole thing off, just a piece of it. Right, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to weld that on there, along here. And then when I get that welded on, I'll come down here and I'll cut another section off. And I'll weld that on there. And I'll keep going until I got the whole thing cut off and it's all tack welded in place. There it is, all welded in place. All the pieces are cut off it. The whole section, all that's gone now. Now I got to go ahead, I'm going to weld all this up here and I'm going to flip it over and trim off the inside and weld it on the inside. What you can see here now, I take this panel here and fit it in place, push it down, goes in there good. So that's ready for the other piece to be bolted on. And then he can find the hole here, drill the hole here, and he can find the hole here and drill the hole here himself. All I'm concerned about is making sure that all this is solid now, because that's the two mounting holes. There's one here and one here, and I don't know exactly where it's two. So he can figure that out on his own. So I'm going to go ahead now, weld all this up. Now there it is, all welded up on this side. Don't that look beautiful along there? Well now, just look at this here. This is 18 gauge, and this is 18 gauge. All this in here is 18 gauge. It was easy to weld, okay? When it gets over to here, this is the 20 gauge, this is the 18 gauge. And I had all kinds of troubles along here. I was blowing holes in it, burning the edge off it, doing it all with it. But I managed to get it welded up, had to turn the weld around to get it. It don't look pretty, but it's strong, it's there. When I turn this over now, I'll weld it on the inside, and that'll give me lots to be able to grind this off on the outside here. So I'm going to go ahead now, flip that over, cut it off, and weld it up. So I ended up cutting off the piece that was along there. And then I went ahead and I welded it all up on the inside. And then I just knocked the head off it. And I did the same thing up here. You don't get into dressing this up too much because you want all this back here for strength. But you remove anything that's going to interfere with, say, fitment and stuff like that. But the more the metal that you leaves on, or welding that you leaves on it, the stronger it will be, right? But that's a pretty strong piece there now. So I'm going to flip this over now and dress the outside. There it is, all grinded up, dressed up. Look at all the shapes and everything on it. Got it this way here. Just had to put some thought into it. It looked like a big undertaking. And all I did is done like I said before, take a piece at a time. This is made up of numerous pieces. But as you can see, the finish outside is the same. It's got a real nice look to it and all. It won't need a lot of work done to this now. When it comes time to do body work and everything, it's got lots of strength. This is the back side added to it. And where's my little panel? Here it is. And my little panel fits right in place. And that fits right in place. Where that goes. That bolts up. That'll be press kind. Whoa. I did some test fits on the fender and put the molding and everything, figured that out, stuff like that. And what I come to realize that this section here, of course, if you remember, none of this was existed. There was nothing in here, so I never had nothing to go by. And it's trial and error. Is this section here had to be opened up and brought down into the car more because this section here stuck off too much because the molding was raised up. Now I got it set up, and I've after test fitting it, and it seems to fit it pretty good and everything now. But like, you're going to run into this type of thing, okay? Do not be afraid of it, because like before, I never had nothing right here on this corner to go by. There was absolutely nothing there. I had the bumper cover right here. I had that to go by, and I had that plastic piece to go by, this piece here. I had 2 of these, and that was it. I can get that fit back in there again. Okay. And then that's the way that's supposed to go, like that. That's supposed to go tuck in behind the thing, and the bumper fits on top of it. And it slides into here, and a screw goes onto it there and holds it in place. Keeps the corner tucked in. And the problem with it was, is this was sticking up like this. It was up too high, right? So I had to cut it in through there, and basically I welded the corner on it. I separated it, so now all I'm going to do is I'm going to re-weld all this up here again now. And that's all part of it. Don't ever get discouraged from it. I'm human as well, like everybody else. You know, just many a time you're going to go at this and you won't get it in the first try. Playing around with it. We have nothing to go by here, and I'm doing trial and error fitting it. Don't be afraid to cut it and re-weld it again. It's only metal, okay? That's the reason why I enjoy it so much, is because if you make a mistake, cut it up, fix it. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to re-weld all this up, grind it all up, dress it all up, and call this one done. That's it. I just welded it all up. I welded some of it up. I used coat hanger to fill it in, and just welded it all up solid. Now I'm just going to grind, dress it up, and that'll be done. There it is, all dressed up. You never say I butchered it. I mean repaired it. But hey, you run into these problems anytime you get into metalwork. You know, everything don't always go smoothly. I have my rough days, and like this is a good example of a lot of troubles running into issues, like cutting them too small. A piece that I made up here, I made it too small and whatnot. And then trying to guesstimate at all this out here, trying to make this work, and then finding out this problem here. And, you know, it's one of those things. It comes with the territory. You have got to have a lot of patience with it. If you lose your patience with it, my advice to you is to lay everything down, walk away, and come back to it with a clear head. I had an awful temper years ago, and many a time I'd want to take a hammer and drive it through something. But as you get older, you just start to realize I'm human. Let's get that all straightened away. But anyway, that's it for that. That's all ready to go now. That'll all fit together nicer now. I'm pleased with it. I'm totally amazed at how much work was involved in doing this. It was a big undertaking to try to get that little belt line and everything back in there, to do all these little square holes. You know, you got number shapes here going on, and it's all done with a grinder, a MIG welder, a hammer, chisel, and files. No specialty tools involved in doing any of this. Just a bit of thought, process, and, you know, going one piece at a time. And taking your time with it, and don't overthink things. And then when you get to the end, you know, you may have to change a few things like I did with this. But anyway, that's another one. I hope the tips were good. And until next time.